This table isn't for you. Must have faked your way in." The words fell like a slap across crystal glass, sharp enough to make the silverware tremble. At 7:46 p.m., inside the chandelier-lit dining hall of La Couronne, every fork, every hushed laugh froze mid-air. The remark wasn't whispered. It was fired like a verdict, meant to sting, meant to brand. Alicia Moore didn't flinch. She carried a tray steady in her hands, posture calm, uniform pressed but unremarkable, just another waitress to everyone watching. But that sentence landed heavy, not because she believed it, but because she had heard versions of it her entire life. The man who said it lounged in a leather chair, cufflinks catching the light, voice dripping with the comfort of someone who never expected to be challenged. His friends chuckled, leaning back as if mocking her was part of the evening menu. And around them, other diners glanced, then looked away, the kind of silence that doesn't stop injustice, it feeds it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Alicia. The tray didn't rattle, though her grip had tightened until her knuckles whitened. She lowered a plate gently in front of the man who mocked her, eyes steady, not giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. From the next table, a man in a bright red shirt, an ordinary diner, white, middle-aged, watched in uneasy silence. He frowned, opened his mouth, but shut it again, trapped between discomfort and fear of speaking up. Then came the whisper, soft, urgent, sliding under the hum of the dining hall. A younger waitress, blonde hair pulled back, leaned close to Alicia's ear. "Don't eat that, they spit in your food." The sentence wasn't for Alicia, it was for the man in red, but it sliced through Alicia all the same. Gasps rippled nearby. Someone at the corner pulled out a phone, camera light blinking red. A single word scrolled across the live chat already forming, racist. Alicia straightened, her face unreadable. The chandelier above sparkled, but it didn't soften the room, it only threw the shadows sharper. The man in red glanced at her again, this time with alarm. He looked ready to speak, to call it out. But before he could, the floor shifted figuratively, then literally. The restaurant manager appeared, striding fast across the marble, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "What's going on here? And why is she even serving at this table?" The laughter at the leather chair grew louder, spilling arrogance across the room. Phones angled higher. Diners leaned in, and Alicia, still calm, still silent, placed the last plate down with surgical precision. Because in the next moment, the storm would begin. The marble floor carried the echo of polished shoes before the man himself appeared, Raymond Harkins, general manager, mid-40 seconds, tall, suit, pressed sharp like he'd been waiting for a stage. His eyes found Alicia instantly, narrowing as if her presence was an inconvenience he'd been forced to acknowledge. "What did I just hear?" he barked, scanning the room. His voice was thick, not a question but an accusation. "Why is she anywhere near this table?" The diners leaned back in their seats, lips curling, like an audience eager for the next act of humiliation. Laughter simmered at the corners. The man in red clenched his jaw, shifting uncomfortably. He wanted to speak, but the weight of silence pressed him down. Alicia said nothing. She stood straight, tray lowered, gaze steady, but her stillness only seemed to provoke him. Raymond stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the white linen tablecloths. "Sloppy service. Wrong posture. This establishment has standards. And you," he let the pause hang, his smirk widening, "don't belong in this picture." Gasps whispered through the room. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable," just as a phone camera tilted higher, catching every frame. Alicia's hand didn't shake. She adjusted the tray on her palm, eyes locked on him, unblinking. The chandelier light caught her cheek, but not in the way of beauty shots, in the way a spotlight traps its subject. Raymond snapped his fingers toward a younger staffer. "Get her out of here. She's not authorized. And if she resists, escort her to the back office. We'll deal with her there." The staffer hesitated. The room did not. A wave of murmurs rolled across tables, forks scraping against porcelain. The man in red muttered under his breath, "This is wrong. Everyone can see it." Alicia finally spoke, her voice low but clear enough to cut through the noise. "Run my name again." Raymond laughed, cold and performative. "Your name doesn't exist in this system anymore. It was a mistake we tolerated too long. Tonight it ends." The phones caught it. The internet was already listening. And Alicia. She simply tilted her head, as if measuring just how much rope he was giving himself to hang with, because the real performance hadn't even started. The silence broke, not with defense, but with cruelty. From the head table, a man in a midnight blue suit, wine glass in hand, leaned forward. His voice was smooth, theatrical, designed to carry across the chandeliers. Fake reservations, fake staff, what's next? Maybe she forged her uniform too? Laughter spilled like cheap champagne, thin and bitter. Another guest chimed in. Careful, she might overcharge us on the bill. You know how they operate. The words hung like smoke, ugly, heavy, inescapable. The man in red at the nearby table stiffened. His fork clinked against porcelain. That's enough, he whispered, but too softly. Not enough to cut through the chorus. Not enough to shield her. Phones rose higher. The live stream count ticked upward. 212 viewers. 319. 480. Comments streamed fast. This is discrimination. Stand your ground, sis. Name the place we're boycotting. Oh. But inside the room, Alicia stood silent, her posture unyielding. She had seen this script before. At 19, a retail clerk accused her of stealing because she lingered too long near the perfume counter. At 27, a banker smirked at her application and asked if she understood how credit worked. At 35, she was hearing it again in her own restaurant. Raymond circled her now, like a hawk preying on stillness. I asked you once, he said louder, sharper. What are you even doing in this dining hall? You are not supposed to be here. His words ricocheted off glass and silver. Diners nodded as if the verdict was obvious. The younger waitress, the one who had whispered earlier, took a shaky step forward. Sir, her name scanned green. I saw it myself. Raymond snapped. Stay out of this if you want your job. The girl froze. The air cracked tighter. Alicia's eyes moved slowly, from the waitress to the man in red, to the dozens of phones capturing everything. Her lips parted, but instead of words, she drew in a breath, steady and sharp, the kind of breath that told a storm was forming, not breaking. The man in red couldn't contain it anymore. He pushed his chair back, the legs screeching against marble. This isn't right, he said, louder this time. Faces turned. Phones tilted toward him. Everyone can see it. A hush, then a low rumble of voices. Not laughter this time, questions, doubts, the first crack in the performance. Raymond's jaw tightened. He stepped closer to Alicia, face inches from hers. This is my dining hall, my rules. And you, he jabbed a finger at her chest, are done here. Security. Two men in black suits appeared from the corridor, shoulders squared, eyes fixed. The live stream viewer count jumped again. 1,000, 200, 1,000, 500. Comments flooded. Don't let them touch her. We're watching this live. Expose them. The phones didn't blink. Neither did Alicia. Because the moment of removal was exactly the moment she had been waiting for. The two security guards moved as one, heavy steps against marble, black jackets cutting through the golden light. Their presence alone was meant to intimidate silent enforcers, the muscle behind Raymond's words. Escort her out, the manager ordered. His voice carried the weight of entitlement, certain that compliance would follow. Now! But Alicia didn't move. She didn't plead, didn't step back. She placed the tray carefully on a vacant table, the porcelain clink loud in the hush. Then she straightened, shoulders square, her gaze steady as a blade. Her hand slipped into her pocket, fingers brushing the cool glass of her phone. A single press. The faint chime cut sharper than any insult hurled that night. Protocol 7 activated. A female voice confirmed, crisp, mechanical, echoing from the device. Live recording to corporate board. All audio and video logged. The guards faltered. Their momentum stalled. Raymond blinked, a fraction of hesitation breaking his performance. Phones around the room zoomed closer, capturing not just a scene of conflict now, but a mystery. What are you doing? He demanded, his confidence catching on the edge of panic. Alicia lifted her chin. Every word you've spoken is already documented. Every action you take from this moment is no longer private, it's evidence. The comment section on the live stream surged. Wait, what's Protocol 7? Yo, she came prepared. Managers sweating 1-0. The younger waitress, still near the edge of the table, whispered, She's not just a server, but her voice drowned beneath the rising tension. Raymond tried to recover, laughing too loudly. Evidence, For what? You're a waitress. Nobody cares. The man in red stood again, firmer this time. We care. Everyone watching cares. He gestured toward the glowing screens pointed like spotlights. You think this disappears? You're already trending. The guards glanced at one another, unsure. Their hands hovered near Alicia but didn't touch. The room was no longer with Raymond, it was watching him, measuring him, waiting for his next mistake. Alicia's silence stretched, taut and unbreakable, until finally she spoke. Her voice was low, calm, deliberate. You accused me of faking my place here, she said, each word deliberate. But the only fraud in this room is the man trying to erase me. The laughter was gone. Phones caught the shift, the sudden stillness that spread like frost. Even Raymond's smirk faltered. And then Alicia added, quieter but sharper than glass. Run my name again. Raymond's laugh was hollow, but his fingers were quick. He snatched the sleek black tablet from a server's stand and began tapping, the screen's glow casting sharp lines across his face. Fine, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. We'll run your name one last time. The diners leaned forward, phones tilted closer. The man in red folded his arms, watching as the screen reflected in Raymond's glasses. A pause. Then his smirk returned. Nothing. No record. No Alicia Moore in our system. He turned the tablet outward, shaking it like a trophy. You see? Fraud. But not everyone was convinced. The younger waitress, pale but determined, stepped forward. That's not true. I checked earlier, I saw her name. Green light. Confirmed reservation. Raymond spun, eyes blazing. You're mistaken. Or lying. She didn't back down. I know what I saw. Murmurs swept the tables. Someone muttered, he erased it. Another diner whispered, that looked manual. Oh. On the live stream, comments exploded. He deleted her name. Caught in 4 kelvins. Protect that young waitress, she's the witness. The view count leapt 2,800, then 3,400. Across the room, a college student tilted his phone sideways to capture both Raymond and Alicia in the same frame. His caption appeared in real time. They're gaslighting her in front of us. Alicia didn't move. Her arms remained loose at her sides, eyes fixed on the man who thought a screen could rewrite reality. Her silence was heavier than any outburst. Raymond mistook it for weakness. He thrust the tablet at her like a weapon. You think standing still makes you strong? You're nobody. You're dressed like staff, but you're not staff. You don't belong at this table, in this hall, or in this business. His voice cracked the hush, ringing against crystal and marble. The diners flinched, but none intervened. The guards lingered, uneasy, shifting from one foot to the other. The man in red slammed his palm on the table. Enough, he shouted, startling half the room. You tore her name out, and everyone here saw it. Dozens of phones caught his words, streaming them outward, multiplying them. A hashtag formed in real time. Number erased, at la couronne. Raymond's jaw tightened. His mask slipped, arrogance bleeding into fury. He turned back to Alicia, eyes burning. You're a fraud, he spat, each syllable dripping venom. And I'm about to prove it. The phones didn't blink, neither did Alicia. Because if Raymond thought fraud was the end of her story, he hadn't seen how it began. Fraud. The word hit the air like a gavel strike, reverberating against marble, hanging above every table. Raymond's lips curled as if he'd sealed the verdict, but his triumph rang hollow. Because the room had changed. The silence wasn't agreement anymore, it was doubt. Every phone in the dining hall had caught the moment he deleted her name. Every lens had recorded the waitress contradicting him. And every screen beyond these walls was alive with rage. He erased her file, look at his hands. She's too calm, something's coming. 3.9开耳闻 viewers now. Alicia stood unmoving. The storm swirled around her, but she was anchored, her stillness drawing more eyes than Raymond's shouting ever could. She let the pause stretch, let the silence speak louder than his insults. The younger waitress trembled near the edge of the scene, glancing between Alicia and the glowing screens. She knew the truth was already slipping out of Raymond's control. The man in red leaned forward, his voice steady now. You call her a fraud? Then why are you afraid of her name? A ripple went through the room. Guests shifted in their chairs. Some who had laughed earlier now frowned, suddenly self-conscious under the glare of dozens of cameras. Raymond snapped, Sit down. You don't know what you're talking about. But his words stumbled, no longer crisp, no longer sure. Alicia finally moved, not with anger, not with fear, just a hand to her phone, One swipe, one tap. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "Nia," she said, "log this moment. Timestamp it." On the other end, clear through the speaker. "Logged. Protocol 7 is live." The diners froze. The guards glanced at each other again. Raymond's smirk faltered. For the first time, he wasn't certain who stood in front of him. And Alicia, her eyes didn't waver, her silence more commanding than any shout, because the real revelation hadn't even begun. Raymond's face flushed crimson. His performance had slipped from smug control into desperate rage. He jabbed a finger toward the door, voice cracking against the chandelier glass. "Enough of this charade. Get her out, now." The guards stepped forward again, heavier this time, their black shoes thudding like a drumbeat of intimidation. But the room was no longer with him. Every table had a phone lifted high. Every guest had become a witness. The glow of 100 screens lit the hall like a constellation, recording his every move. On the live stream, the numbers spiked. 5,200, then 6,000. Comments cascaded. "Don't touch her. This manager is done. Look at her, she's not even scared." "Has Raider." The man in red rose to his feet again, bolder now. "You're making a mistake," he told Raymond, his voice carrying across the hall. "Everyone can see what you're doing." But Raymond didn't listen. His pride was bleeding out, and every second the cameras rolled was another wound he couldn't close. He shoved past the man in red, eyes locked on Alicia. "You think you can stand there silent and humiliate me in my own house?" he snarled. Alicia's gaze didn't shift. She stood rooted, calm as stone, the storm breaking around her but never through her. The pause stretched until even the guards hesitated, waiting for her to flinch. She didn't. Raymond lost patience. His hand shot out, gripping her arm, forcing the confrontation he thought he wanted. The dining hall gasped as one. Phones jerked closer. 100 lenses captured the exact second his fingers touched her sleeve, and Alicia, still calm, still anchored, lifted her eyes and spoke one sentence. Soft but lethal. "That was your last mistake." The grip on her arm was firm, but it was Raymond's confidence that broke first. Gasps rippled like thunder through the dining hall. Every diner leaned forward, phones up, lenses locked on the sight of a manager manhandling the only black woman in the room. Forks clattered against plates. Someone whispered, horrified, "He touched her." The live stream chat detonated. "That's assault. 7,200 watching. Send this viral." She warned him. Alicia didn't pull away. Her stillness turned the moment inside out, making his aggression look smaller, weaker. She lifted her phone higher, pressed one button, and her voice slid into the tense silence. "Nia," she said calmly, "escalate the system. Begin full documentation." Through the speaker came the crisp reply, "Escalation confirmed. Live broadcast mirrored to corporate archive. Legal compliance engaged." The guards froze. They'd been trained for drunken guests, not lawsuits in real time. They glanced at each other, hands hovering but unwilling to tighten. Raymond laughed too loudly, the kind of laugh that cracked under its own weight. "Corporate? Compliance? You're delusional. You're just a server in an apron." The younger waitress spoke up, trembling but audible. "No, she's not." Head snapped toward her. "She's in the system," the girl insisted, voice growing stronger. "Not as staff, as—" "Enough!" Raymond roared, cutting her off. His hand shook now, not from strength but from panic. He dropped Alicia's arm as if it burned him. The man in red stepped closer, voice steady and sharp. "You keep calling her a fraud, but frauds don't have protocols. Frauds don't have legal teams recording you live." The room tilted. Diners who had laughed earlier now shifted uncomfortably, phones angled higher, catching every twitch on Raymond's face. Alicia finally moved. She slipped the apron off in one smooth motion, folding it neatly before setting it on the table beside her. No theatrics, no raised voice, just precision. Her words followed, quiet but laced with steel. "You erased my name, tried to erase me, but names don't vanish just because you will them gone." A silence gripped the room, taut as a wire. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their light a second longer. Raymond's lips parted, but no sound came out. And Alicia, eyes steady, voice unwavering, delivered the line that made every phone in the hall tremble in unison. "You wanted to know who I am? Then listen carefully." The air was electric, every breath held, every phone trembling in expectant silence. Alicia's gaze swept the room over the glittering tables, over the stunned diners, over Raymond himself, now frozen in place. "I am not your waitress," she said, voice calm but resonant, carrying to the farthest corner of the hall. "I am not a fraud, and I didn't fake my way into this dining room." Her pause was deliberate, her eyes locked on Raymond's as if pinning him to the marble floor. "I own it." The words landed like a detonation. Gasps erupted, silverware clattered, a wine glass toppled and shattered. Phones shook as guests jostled to capture every second. The live stream chat surged past 10,000 viewers. "She owns the restaurant?" This just flipped 180 degrees. "Manager about to lose everything." The younger waitress clasped her hands to her mouth, tears shining. The man in red shook his head slowly, awe settling into his features. Raymond staggered back a step, the tablet still clutched in his hand like dead weight. His smirk had evaporated, leaving only pallor and panic. "No, no, that's impossible," he muttered, but his voice cracked. She's lying." But Alicia didn't flinch. She lifted her phone again, the speaker amplifying Nia's voice. "Confirmation. Alicia Moore, CEO, Moore Hospitality Group, owner of La Couronne." The truth hit harder than any shout. The silence that followed wasn't disbelief anymore, it was judgment. Diners whispered, horrified, not at Alicia, but at what they'd just witnessed. Raymond's shoulders sagged. His authority, his performance, his arrogance all drained away under the weight of her revelation. And Alicia, steady as ever, didn't need to raise her voice when she spoke next. "Now," she said, her words slicing through the hall, "we address consequences." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The chandelier light glinted on the shattered glass at Raymond's feet, but all eyes stayed fixed on Alicia. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Nia," she said into her phone, each syllable clear as crystal. "Terminate Raymond Harkins, effective immediately. Revoke his access." The words struck harder than any shout. Guests gasped. Phones zoomed in. Raymond's lips parted, but before he could protest, the confirmation chimed through the hall. "Processing. Complete." At once, the tablet in Raymond's hand went black. His employee badge, clipped to his pocket, emitted a harsh electronic beep, the red light flashing. He slapped at it desperately, but the system had already locked him out. A murmur rolled through the diners, followed by applause, soft at first, then swelling like a wave. The man in red clapped once, sharp and deliberate, until others joined. The younger waitress covered her mouth with both hands, tears spilling over. On the live stream, numbers spiked past 15,000. Comments cascaded in real time. "He just got fired, live." "Justice served." "This is history. Bookmark this." Raymond's face crumpled. He lunged toward Alicia, sputtering, You can't do this." But she didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on him, steady, immovable. "I already did." Security stepped in not toward Alicia, but toward him. For the first time, the guards knew who held real authority. They took his arms firmly, steering him back from the table he once ruled with arrogance. The diners erupted in cheers, phones lifted high to capture the reversal. Raymond thrashed once, twice, but the fight had drained from him. His voice cracked. "This isn't fair. She tricked you all." But no one believed him anymore. The evidence had unfolded live, unedited, unstoppable. Alicia exhaled slowly, then turned not to Raymond, not to the staff, but to the crowd itself. "This house doesn't tolerate prejudice, not in whispers, not in policy, not in leadership." Applause swelled again, louder this time, filling every corner of the dining hall. Raymond's badge beeped one last time before the guards dragged him through the side door, his protests muffled by the roar of approval. But Alicia didn't sit back. She lifted her phone again, her tone colder now, the steel edge of unfinished business. "Nia," she said, "prepare the full audit. Tonight we don't just remove one man, we cleanse the system." The applause faded into a restless hush, as if the diners knew the performance wasn't over. Alicia still stood tall in the center of the dining hall, apron gone, authority unshakable. The silence that followed her last command was not emptiness, it was anticipation. Her voice cut through it, calm, sharp, unavoidable. "Nia, begin full audit. Flag every incident logged under this restaurant in the last 12 months. Tonight, no more shadows." The confirmation echoed from her phone. "Audit activated. Records streaming now." Gasps rippled as screens across the hall lit up staff tablets, Reservation monitors, even the digital wine lists began scrolling with reports. Each one revealed a pattern. Complaints ignored, names deleted, guests profiled. The diners leaned forward, horrified. The man in red whispered, "They covered this up for months." The younger waitress finally stepped closer, standing beside Alicia now instead of behind her. Her voice shook, but it carried, "I filed 2 of those complaints. Both dismissed." Murmurs turned to outrage. A silver-haired woman at table 6 stood, raising her voice. "I complained too, and they said I misremembered." Phones caught her words, amplifying them outward. The live stream comments detonated. "This wasn't one night, it's a pattern." "She's exposing the whole system." 20 Kelvin's viewers, keep going. Alicia nodded once, not in surprise, but in confirmation. Every guest who was erased. Tonight, you are restored. And every staff member who silenced them tonight, you are done. Across the hall, more badges beeped red. 2 assistant managers gasped as their access flickered out. A head waiter stumbled back, pale, his tablet freezing before going dark. Applause roared again, this time not polite but defiant. Guests clapped, whistled, even stood. The man in red shouted over the noise, "This is what accountability looks like." "Oh." Raymond's voice tried to pierce the celebration from the hallway where security held him. "She can't do this! She can't!" But his protest sounded small now, drowned under the weight of truth. Alicia turned slowly, surveying the hall. Her gaze didn't waver, didn't soften. She let the storm of noise crest, then fall into silence once more. Her final words of the night's penultimate act dropped like a verdict. Tonight was never about one manager. It was about a system that thought I was invisible. And in a moment, we will close that chapter for good. The room leaned forward, caught between awe and suspense. Phones lifted higher, desperate not to miss the final blow, because everyone knew the end was near. The dining hall was no longer just a restaurant. It was a stage, a courtroom, and a broadcast tower all at once. Every chandelier sparkled like a spotlight, every phone like a camera lens. The entire room seemed to lean toward one woman in the center, waiting for her verdict. Alicia lifted her phone one last time, the device small in her hand but immense in its weight. Her voice was steady, deliberate, cutting through the roar and falling silence like a blade. "Nia," she said, "execute the closure protocol." The reply came instantly, metallic and merciless. Closure confirmed, shutting down all managerial accounts, terminating corrupted access. Then the dominoes fell. All around the dining hall, devices blinked dark. Staff tablets froze mid-screen and powered down. The reservation monitors in the corner flickered, then scrolled a single line of text. "Assesses revoked." One by one, badges on the lapels of managers beeped sharply, their green lights turning red in synchronized shame. A ripple of gasps surged through the diners. Then the silence broke. Cheers burst out like a wave slamming against stone. Diners rose from their seats, clapping, whistling, stamping their feet on marble. The live stream counter surged past 50,000, then 60,000. Comments streamed so fast they blurred into fire. She just shut it all down. This is what justice looks like. History in real time. Hi. The younger waitress edged closer, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking but audible. She wasn't just thanking Alicia for herself, she was thanking her for every erased complaint, every ignored name. Alicia looked at her, and for a moment her gaze softened. But she didn't dwell. Gratitude wasn't her goal, dignity was. From the hallway, Raymond's voice bellowed weakly against the roar. "You'll regret this. She tricked you all. This isn't fair." But his words were drowned beneath applause. No one was listening anymore. He had been stripped of the very thing he once weaponized authority. His protests sounded small, almost pathetic, swallowed by the momentum Alicia had unleashed. The man in red raised his phone high, filming the moment as if immortalizing history. His voice carried above the claps. "They tried to humiliate her, but she wrote the ending herself." Applause thundered louder, the dining hall vibrating with vindication. Diners who had once smirked now clapped the hardest, desperate to align themselves with justice. Alicia stood perfectly still until the noise reached its peak. Then she raised a hand, not loud, not commanding, just steady, and the hall obeyed. Applause ebbed, murmurs faded. The silence that settled wasn't awkward, it was reverent. She looked not at Raymond, not even at the diners, but straight into the countless cameras streaming outward to the world. Her eyes didn't just address the room, they addressed history. "You thought silence meant submission," she said, each word deliberate, unshaken. But silence was strategy, and tonight silence spoke louder than hate. The hall erupted again, but this time it wasn't just applause. It was a standing ovation. Chairs scraped back, hands clapped until palms stung, voices shouted her name. The live stream detonated past 100,000 viewers. Screens across cities lit up with her words. Hashtags surged. Number silent power, number justice served, number she owns the room. The younger waitress wept openly, shoulders shaking, as other staff members joined the applause. The man in red clapped so hard his palms turned red, his face split with awe. Even guests who had been silent witnesses now shouted in unity. Alicia did not smile. She did not bask. She simply placed the folded apron, the disguise that had carried her through humiliation to revelation, on the nearest table. It was not discarded, but laid down with intention. A symbol that her silence had never been weakness. It had been a weapon. Then, without spectacle, she turned and began walking toward the exit. Her stride was calm, unhurried, the stride of someone who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. Every eye followed her. Every phone tracked her until the last second she crossed the threshold. Behind her, the hall roared. Before her, the night opened wide, and in the echo of her final words, a truth remained etched into every witness, every recording, every headline that would follow. Power doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and when it chooses the right moment, the world cannot unhear it.